Hey, what's going on, guys? It's been a minute. Today, I want to talk about Opendoor. I want to give some really honest thoughts about this business and, yeah, hopefully help out some other investors with just my thoughts. So, I used to invest in real estate. I built $1 million portfolio and then I sold it all. And if I had to say why, I don't think real estate is nearly as good a business now as it was 10 years ago. I don't think the opportunity is good now as 10 years ago. And I just didn't feel like I was making enough for my time and effort. The reason I share this though is because I think I have better context in real estate than the average investor. So I can probably give you better context on whether or not Opendoor is a viable business model and whether or not this company will work. So, what does Opendoor do? They basically flip and wholesale homes. The difference between flipping and wholesaling is wholesaling, you usually just don't put any work into the home at all. Flipping, you do actually renovate it. And usually, when you're really flipping a home, it's like new floors, paint, kitchen, and bathrooms. Those are like the big ones. And if you do that, a lot of times that is enough to like make a home look a lot better. So that's mostly what they do. You can list homes. They do have loans, title escrow, in a marketplace. I don't think these are meaningful businesses, and the reason why is because they don't ever mention them in their earnings call. They only mention the homes they have bought and sold. So my guess is those don't deliver much, if any, revenue, would be my guess. So to understand why Opendoor exists, I think it's helpful to understand the current progress process. So usually you find a real estate agent. Real estate agents do take a commission, and they will list it on the MLS, which is multiple listing service for you. Once you find one, you have to get your home ready to sell, cleaning, painting, modest renovations, all that kind of stuff. Then you list it. Once you list it, people submit offers. You have the opportunity to accept those offers. Sometimes those offers come with contingencies. So sometimes they want you to fix something, or they have a contingency where, like, if they can't get a mortgage and they don't have to close, that kind of stuff. And then once the offer is accepted and everything's agreed upon, usually they just have to get approved the mortgage. You set a closing date. You show up. You sign your papers. You sell your house. Now, this process, while it's kind of slow and a little bit tedious, and yes, you do pay a 5% commission, you do actually make the most money doing this process. So Opendoor does not make you more money, which is very important to understand. What Opendoor does do is they're basically just quick and efficient. You can get your home sold to Opendoor in a couple weeks. So you go to the website, you give them their information, they send someone out to just evaluate your home. They give you an offer. Once you accept it, they basically will give you cash to close on within a couple of weeks. Usually, they can go longer if you need that flexibility. But they're not going to pay your market value for your home, because if they do, they can't make any money. So their goal is to buy it for less and sell it for more, right? I actually think this is the thing that probably hurts Opendoor the most is they talk a lot about how bad the current process is, but then they don't actually offer you a much better solution. Like, yes, you sell it faster, but you sell it faster by taking a loss. For most people, their home is their most valuable asset. So they are very incentivized to get top dollar for it, even with the 5% commission you'll pay to realtors. Okay. So the next thing I want to discuss is how flipping works. Usually flipping, you want your all-in cost to be 80% of the after repair value, or ARV. And that's because if you go in 100% of ARV, you don't make any money. So that 20% margin is usually enough to make money and give you a margin for error. Okay. So in this example, you buy it for a house with an ARV at 400K. Let's say you buy it for $300,000. Okay. You put in $60,000 worth of renovations. Okay. You put it on the market. You realize you thought the after repair value was actually 400K, but it's not. So you have to drop the house $20,000 for 380K. It sells. You make $20,000, right? Except you owe $10,000 in commissions because you still had to list on the MLS. You only make $10,000. Now, $10,000 might seem pretty good for this hypothetical flip, but you have to remember you're putting 2 months of your life into it. You're dealing with a lot of stress. Okay. Also, normally when you find a flip like this, you have marketing dollars, you pay interest, you pay taxes, you pay insurance. So like, it's very easy to eat into your margin. Okay. And then for 2 months of your life, and especially if you're doing the work yourself, and $370,000 or $380,000 investment, 10K is like actually not that good. That's a 3% return on your investment. So that is why you have that margin for error. In ideal scenario, you do sell it for 400K, right? And then you're making like 30 grand, and that really is worth it. The problem with Opendoor is the way they do this is even worse. So Opendoor, in our hypothetical example, they find a home for 400K. Opendoor usually pays 80% of ARV. They usually don't pay more like 60%, which is what you pay. So they'll be in for 360K right off the bat. Opendoor right now spends $30,000 per home that they acquire and sell just in marketing costs for buying and selling. So they'll be in for $390,000 before they have flipped the home. Okay. By the time they go and do the repairs, they usually do. I estimated another $35,000 that they pay in like interest and taxes and repairs. Okay. They'll be in for like 425K, right? So they lose $25,000 on average per flip, okay? I don't know why I didn't use those numbers here, just ignore that. So you think about it, right? It's like Opendoor is unprofitably flipping homes. And a lot of that comes from the fact that they're paying too much up front and they're not able to sell enough on the back half. Okay. You can appreciate the price to an extent, right? Where you can like fix the floors and put in new paint, but you can only do so much. So like realistically, they're paying $360K up front when they need to be paying like $330, $300K. Okay. So they right now lose $25,000 per flip. Assuming no marketing costs, they'd make $5,000 a flip. Okay. Now think about this. You're putting in, $400,000 to make $5,000, a 1% return. That is terrible. Okay. And you're Opendoor, so you have thousands of homes in your book at a time. So if the economy goes down, all your home prices go down. So every time there's a recession, Opendoor just loses $1 billion if they were to like able to do this without marketing, right? When you look at home builders, okay, let's assume that they're profitable, they make it work, okay? Home builders trade at like 8 to 10 times earnings. So we're giving them the benefit of the doubt. We're saying they figure it out, okay, and everything works. Okay, they're going to trade at 8 to 10 times earnings because home building, you buy land, you forcibly appreciate by putting a house on it, okay? Flipping is really not that different of an idea, except home building is much more scalable. It's much easier to implement. So home builders get like 15% net income margin. Your net income margin, like best case scenario with the way Opendoor is currently operating is 1%. So even if Opendoor did work, they probably shouldn't trade it they probably should trade at like a slight premium to book value when they're profitable, basically. Okay. And then the best way to emphasize what I'm pointing out is you have national home builders. You have national real estate brokerages. You have REITs that own properties in every single city, but you don't have any flippers everywhere. Why? Why have all these other businesses scaled pre-internet, during internet, but home flipping has yet to do it? There's a lot of people, a lot of flippers out there. There's a lot of wholesalers out there. They exist in every single market, but no one has managed to go beyond the geographical location. It's mostly because it's just nearly impossible to do. And that's because flipping is a very localized business. It's a low margin business. And most of the time, flippers are able to make it work by sourcing properties off market, which they do through a combination of marketing, but also they have a lot of connections. Okay. So with that, I think it's pretty clear it's not a good business. I guess we'll look at the financials really quickly here. They are losing hundreds of millions of dollars annually right now. They will probably lose, 1 to 200 million this year. And they did blow through $1 billion in 2022. So if we had another recession, I think Opendoor would be in a really bad spot. I found this interview with the CEO, and I found this interview so concerning, so concerning. I'm going to go through a couple parts of this interview and explain why.
It's very real. And underwriting, for what it's worth, is similar-ish. The underwriting of a car is difficult. Underwriting of a home is difficult. They're similar-ish difficult.
Okay, they're not similar-ish at all. They're completely different. Underwriting a home is much harder than underwriting a car. And that's because with cars, they're uniform. A Honda Civic in New York City is the same as a Honda Civic in Arkansas. They're the same. And a lot of times with cars, you have 10 automakers. So you don't have that nearly as much variety. And you also have generations. So certain things like Honda Civics tend to carry their value because they're good quality cars, right? And I'm sure other cars are not good quality. So if it's 10 years old with 200,000 miles, it should sell at a discount. To make that kind of statement is insane. And I know so many people are but AI will help. Yes, it will improve their accuracy, but AI is not a magic bullet, okay? Valuing homes, there's a reason why it's localized. Some of it is people just know, okay? They know what will people pay, based on the street, based on the block, based on the district. All these kind of things matter. They're much closer to the ground, so they can also tell when things are shifting quickly. So I found that statement extremely concerning. They're very different. And what I found most concerning is I can tell this dude doesn't understand the asset class. So this is the next part.
Happened, and companies shouldn't take credit or blame for macro. But what happened in the US with interest rates had basically never happened before, and I think will literally never happen again because it was so obviously stupid.
Okay. I found that just an insane comment to be making. Bad macroeconomic things happen all the time, unfortunately. In the last 5 years, we've had 3 major events. We had COVID, interest rates, and then we had the tariffs this year. These things are going to happen. And if you are not prepared and you're a house flipper like Opendoor, you're flipping at scale, you run the risk of having one recession and your entire company going bankrupt. And even if you make it profitable, like we're talking about how they have razor thin margins, you risk, even if you don't go bankrupt, losing years worth of earnings. You have to be prepared for these. And the idea of like saying, hey, that was stupid and that was irresponsible, they shouldn't do that again, you just never know, man. Most economic events come from people doing really stupid stuff. Like 2008 was from people doing really stupid stuff. The 1929 recession was from people doing really stupid stuff. Rarely do recessions happen from people doing intelligent things. So the fact that he was like dismissive of that and did not take it seriously and kind of swept under the rug, I just found concerning. This is the reality of real estate. You have to be prepared for macro. The best real estate investors are. Okay? And I saved the best for last because this quote is just completely idiotic.
I think there's a very real thing where, like, I think due to some bad advice, the company tried for a little while to essentially only buy homes that were mispriced. Like, we will only buy homes that are mispriced by 20%. And turns out just, yeah, you can build a hedge fund.
Okay. That was honest to God idiotic. I lost IQ points reading that or listening to that. You are a house flipper. If you buy a house for its value and you sell it on for its value, there's no margin. There's no money to be made. That is how house flipping works. That is how wholesaling works. That is the Opendoor business model. We will buy your house. We will buy it quickly. We make your life easy, but in exchange, we have to make our margin. And that margin needs to be significant. For the CEO to not understand that is concerning. And I know what he's going to say. We're a tech company who happens to do real estate. Okay, you're a tech company with real estate economic fundamentals because you transact in real estate. That's how that works. So for the CEO to say something like that, it makes me concerned because it makes me feel like he does not understand the asset class. He does not understand what he's doing, and he does not understand the risk. I would not be surprised to see Opendoor lose a lot of money in the next year or two. Okay, now I'm sure he's a smart guy. I'm sure he'll sit down with his CFO, and the CFO will be like, look, you're a moron. This is how it works. But if that does not happen, it will be concerning, okay? How does Opendoor fix their business? There is a path forward, but they need to stop flipping homes. That is the number one thing they need to do because it's not working. The best thing Opendoor could possibly do is there is friction in here. There might be a way that they can figure out to partner with real estate agents or help, other parts of the buying and selling process. Like if you want to buy a new home and you don't have money right away, maybe you can get like a very quick line of credit or something from Opendoor because they know how to value homes quickly. Maybe you can build a competitor with the MLS, right? Even though MLS has network effects, which is very hard to compete with. Maybe some of these things could happen. I put this at the end here about low interest rates don't matter. I'll just say this quickly, and I won't go too much into this. When you're a flipper, you're on the buying and selling side. So if selling is good, it's harder to buy. If buying is good, it's harder to sell. So flippers never really have an ideal interest rate environment. A lot of people think next year will be good for Opendoor. It might help them get old properties off their books. They might have an incremental benefit, but low interest rates long term is like actually not that accretive to their business model. So I just want to point that out. In general, my opinion is this company is actually cooked. It's in a very bad spot. Retail investors have no idea what they're doing, and it's extremely unlikely this company does well long term. I would be surprised if Opendoor is worth even $1 billion, a couple years from now. But as always, time will tell. Hopefully this is helpful. Best of luck. Bye.